Hey Texas voters, welcome to part 7 of this series where we are breaking down and discussing the 17 state constitutional amendments that are up for our vote this November. If you stuck with me this far, I commend you. I know just how much information this is, and I know firsthand just how hard it can be to find information online to make you understand the implications of your vote in these matters. After I read the proposition myself and go through the overview and get a basic idea of what it's talking about, I then start to formulate my own questions, starting with the very basics, and hop over to the search engine to try to do some research. Now, the problem is with those very basic questions, there's only a few sources that pop up over and over again, and a lot of them are from the .gov websites, which is cool. That is a source. That's useful information. However, that language and jargon doesn't necessarily talk about other sides of the matter or anything else. And so from there, I also have to try to formulate other questions that could help me try to make sense of the answers that I'm seeking to find, right? So this is tough, and part of that is on purpose. So we're going to go over the proposition, and then we'll go over the overview of it, and then I will share with you some of the information that I found I believe relates to the matter. If you have other questions, drop them in the comments, and I'll see if I can research those as well to see what pops up about that. Or if you have already done that research and maybe know more about it, I'd love to hear your feedback on that too. Texas Proposition 7. Establish homestead exemption for surviving spouses of veterans killed by a service-connected disease amendment. A yes vote supports amending the state constitution to authorize the state legislature to establish a property tax exemption on all or part of the market value of a homestead of a surviving spouse of a veteran who died from a service-connected disease. A no vote opposes amending the state constitution to authorize the state legislature to establish a property tax exemption on all or part of the market value of the homestead of a surviving spouse of a veteran who died from a service-connected disease. Proposition 7 would authorize the Texas state legislature to pass a law to provide a homestead property tax exemption to the surviving spouse of a veteran of the armed services of the United States who died as a result of a condition or disease that is presumed under federal law to have been service-connected regardless of disability status. The amendment would also authorize the state legislature to allow the surviving spouse to apply the homestead exemption in an amount equal to the dollar amount of the exemption of the first homestead for which the exemption was received, to a new qualifying residence. A surviving spouse would only qualify for the exemption as long as they have not remarried. The exemption would apply to tax years after January 1st, 2026. Now, they already have written and passed legislation on this, House Bill 2508. So were this to pass, they already have something that would allow it to kick in. According to the State Comptroller of Public Accounts, 11% of the 27,996 completed claims filed with the U.S. by surviving family for veterans killed by a service-connected disease were Texans. The fiscal note estimated that 3,000 surviving spouses would be eligible for the property tax exemption under Proposition 7 in House Bill 2508. And this one does have bipartisan support. Now, a little bit of background info. A homestead is defined by the house and land used as a person's principal residence, offering significant protection from creditors and providing property tax exemptions. And homestead laws shields a person's primary residence from a forced sale to satisfy most debts. With a homestead, creditors generally cannot force the sale of your home to collect on unsecured debts, such as credit card bills or medical expenses. Now, there are acreage limitations as to what would qualify as a homestead. For urban homestead, up to 10 acres, which can be a home, a business, or both. And a rural homestead, up to 200 acres for a family and 100 acres for a single adult. Now, there are debts that the homestead exemption does not protect from, and that includes purchase money from the home, the mortgage, property taxes and IRS tax liens, home improvement loans, and home equity loans. There's a few primary types of exemptions that already exist. That includes a general residence exemption, which reduces a home's appraised value for school district taxes. As of November 2023, the standard exemption is $100,000. Another exists for over 25 or disabled exemption, provides an additional school tax exemption for qualified individuals. For those over 65, it can also freeze the school district taxes at their current rate. There's one for disabled veteran exemption. A partial or total exemption is available to disabled veterans, their surviving spouses, and the surviving spouses of service members killed in action. The amount of the exemption varies based on disability rating. And there are also local exemptions, so many cities, counties, and other local taxing units offer their own additional homestead exemptions. Now, there are some negative effects that do come from homestead exemptions. Not this one in particular. I'm talking about a general broad effect that occurs, especially when they have multiple that they keep stacking on. Reduced tax revenue. Homestead exemptions decrease the amount of property tax collected by local governments. To make up for this deficit, municipalities may have to cut funding for essential public services like schools, police, fire departments, and road maintenance. Shifting tax burden. To compensate for the lost revenue from exempt homeowners, local governments may increase the tax burden on other properties that do not qualify for the exemption. This can lead to higher taxes for businesses, investment properties, and most notably renters. Difficulty funding capital projects. Exemptions can make it harder for municipalities to finance long-term capital investments such as new infrastructure, parks, or public buildings. There are more negative effects of homestead exemptions, and when you start to stack those exemptions, those negative effects do become more prominent and they come more to the forefront. With that being said, I just wish that more moderation had been used previously to this one, but that more moderation had been used when writing homestead exemptions into law, again, prior to this one, because I do believe that surviving spouses of veterans killed by a service-connected disease should have this benefit awarded to them. Plus, there are still qualifications that they would need to meet in order to be eligible for this homestead exemption. So we can support this group of people who have suffered a terrible loss, and we can also keep in mind the total ramifications of all of the homestead exemptions that have come into place, because those do eventually, over time, reduce the resources that local communities have. So as those come to a head, we just need to be aware of how the totality of it all had an effect on that. If you have any comments, questions, want more details, or you can provide more details yourself, you know where to drop them. Let's keep this conversation going, and I'll see y'all again in part 8.